My name is Clara, and I'm 32 years old. This story began at a Christmas dinner the night my brother called my life's work a useless idea. He told me to sell it and pay my debts, and the rest of my family just sat there in silence. They didn't know the truth yet. They didn't know that my useless idea was about to change everything. My family thought I was a failure. What they didn't know is that in a matter of days, my life was about to become something truly priceless. And the Christmas dinner. It was no longer about forgiveness, but about a revelation. What was the truth? And why did it change everything? Let me tell you. The laughter around the table was loud enough to make the chandelier tremble, but my brother's words cut sharper than the carving knife. "Sell your useless idea and pay your debts," Clara, Jason said, raising his glass with that smug smirk he'd perfected since childhood. "It's Christmas, not a charity dinner." The room froze for a heartbeat. My mother cleared her throat, pretending to adjust the napkins. My father took a slow sip of wine, saying nothing. I smiled tightly, pretending the turkey in front of me wasn't turning to ash in my mouth. They didn't know the truth, not yet. Snowflakes fell outside the window, landing softly on the frosted glass. The lights from the Christmas tree blinked rhythmically, like they were mocking me. I forced myself to breathe. "It's not useless," I said quietly, setting my fork down. "Golden light is helping people." Jason snorted, slicing another piece of roast beef. "Helping people? You've been tinkering with that gadget for 3 years? You could have had a real job by now." My father leaned back in his chair, voice low and dismissive. "Your brother's not wrong, Clara. At some point you have to be practical. Dreams don't pay bills." There it was, the sentence I'd heard my whole life. I looked at them, these people who shared my blood, but none of my beliefs. "It's not about money," I said, my voice steadier now. "It's about helping people remember." Jason rolled his eyes. "Remember what, their grocery lists?" His wife laughed softly beside him. "Oh, Jason, stop," she said, though her grin didn't match her words. I pushed my chair back, needing air. My mother reached across the table, her bracelet clinking softly. "Sweetheart, don't take it personally. You know your brother just worries about you." "No, Mom," I said, standing up. "He doesn't worry. He judges." Jason's smirk vanished for a second. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "I'm just saying you're wasting your time. You're 32, still living in a rented apartment working on some invention nobody wants. You could have stayed in the family business, but no, you had to play the visionary." I stared at him, remembering all the times he'd called me Little Einstein when we were kids, pretending it was affection when it was anything but. I wanted to tell him that golden light wasn't just an invention. It was a breakthrough. That I had already received an offer, a serious one, from a research foundation in San Francisco. But the paperwork wasn't finalized yet, and I didn't want to jinx it. So instead, I took my coat from the back of the chair. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my tone even. "I think I've had enough Christmas spirit for one night." "Clara," my father warned. "Don't ruin the evening." I paused at the doorway, turning just enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not the one ruining it." The air outside hit my face like a slap-cold, cleansing honest. The neighborhood was bathed in gold from the streetlights, the snow thickening with each breath. I walked without direction, just away. My boots crunched on the pavement as if marking a line between who I was and who I'd become. Golden light. Even the name felt ironic now. It was a wearable device, part AI, part sensor, that could detect early signs of cognitive decline in seniors. I'd started developing it after watching my grandmother fade away piece by piece, her memories dissolving into silence. I built it for her, and for everyone like her. But to my family, it was just another sign that I'd lost touch with reality. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my lab assistant, Maya. "Clara, call me ASAP. Big news. Golden Care reached out again. They're offering to license the patent. 8.9 million valuation." I stopped walking, the world tilting for a moment. $8.9 million. I read the number twice. Then again. My breath fogged in front of me as I laughed under my breath. Jason's words echoed in my head. "Sell your useless idea." I looked up at the sky. The snow had slowed, and for the first time all evening the light didn't feel cruel. It shimmered soft and forgiving like a secret keeping itself until morning. By the time I returned home, my phone was buzzing nonstop emails from lawyers, investors, congratulatory notes from people who'd ignored my proposals just months ago. I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. I wanted silence. I walked into my apartment, small, cluttered, filled with prototypes, wires, and notebooks. On the counter sat the first golden light device I ever built. The casing was cracked, the wires imperfect, but it worked. I pressed the button. The soft golden glow filled the room. "Useless idea," I whispered to no one. "Sure." The light shimmered gently like it was listening. I sat down at my desk, opening my laptop. Maya's message blinked at the top of my inbox. 8.9 million. The valuation was real. Golden Care wanted a meeting on Monday to finalize the deal. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Not for the money, not even for the victory, but for the silence I'd had to swallow at that dinner table. For every moment, someone told me I was dreaming too big. The snow outside caught the light from my window, scattering it across the street like tiny pieces of gold. Christmas wasn't about forgiveness this year. It was about revelation. I picked up my phone, opened Jason's contact, and hovered over the call button. Then I smiled and set it down. "You'll see soon enough, brother," I whispered. "Merry Christmas." The next morning, the snow had hardened into ice glittering beneath the weak Boston sun. My phone buzzed with messages I hadn't read yet. Maya's texts, meeting requests, a dozen subject lines beginning with "Congratulations on your patent update." But I couldn't bring myself to open any of them. My hands were still shaking from last night's dinner. Jason's words echoed like static through my mind. "Sell your useless idea and pay your debts." I sat by the window of my small apartment, the same one Jason loved to mock, sipping burnt coffee from a chipped mug. My workspace took up half the living room. 3 monitors, loose wires, prototype parts, notebooks full of sketches. On the desk sat the golden light prototype, its metal casing dented from when I dropped it last week. I picked it up, brushed my thumb across its surface, and the faint golden glow flickered on, weak but alive. My grandmother's photo sat beside it, her smile frozen in a moment from 10 years ago before Alzheimer's had stolen her laughter. I'd built a golden light for her. It was supposed to detect early signs of cognitive decline by reading subtle neural patterns through a wearable device. My grandmother never got to use it. She passed before the first prototype was even finished. But the dream remained, the belief that maybe, just maybe, technology could protect what time tried to erase. I plugged in the device, watching data scroll across my laptop screen. The last test results were promising 98% accuracy. Real-time alerts, successful integration with smart home systems. Golden Light wasn't just an idea anymore, it was real. Still, the sting of Jason's mockery wouldn't fade. He'd always been the golden child, literally and figuratively. Our father used to say Jason was born for business while I was born to chase fireflies. A knock on the door snapped me out of my thoughts. It was Maya, bundled in a red coat, her cheeks pink from the cold. "You didn't answer my calls," she said, holding up a thermos. "So I brought caffeine and a reminder that your invention is worth $8.9 million. I blinked. "It's not finalized yet." She grinned. "Golden Care doesn't make unofficial offers, Clara. This is happening. The valuation is locked. You're about to change everything." Her words hit harder than I expected. $8.9 million. The number didn't even feel real. I hesitated, setting the device down. "I don't want to celebrate until the ink is dry." Maya sat across from me, opening her laptop. "Then let's make it real. They want to meet Monday morning at their Boston office. You'll present the final demo, and if all goes well, you'll sign." "And if it doesn't?" I asked quietly. She looked up, her expression softening. "Then we'll find someone else. You built something incredible, Clara. You know that, right?" I nodded, but my chest felt heavy. "Jason doesn't think so." Maya frowned. "Jason's a banker who thinks compassion doesn't belong on a balance sheet. Forget him." But I couldn't. Not after what happened last night. Every sneer, every laugh, it still echoed. I'd thought that by proving myself I'd finally silence those voices. But the truth was, success only mattered if I believed it myself. When Maya left, I sat there for a long time staring at the prototype glowing softly in my hand. I remembered the first time it worked. The tiny pulse of light had filled the room like a heartbeat. I'd cried then, realizing I'd turned grief into something tangible, something golden. That night, as the city lights blinked in the distance, I finally opened my emails. One from Golden Care caught my eye. Subject: final review, Golden Light acquisition. 8.9M valuation. My hands trembled as I clicked. Dear Ms. Reed, we're pleased to confirm our interest in acquiring Golden Light for integration into Golden Care's Senior Wellness Division. We believe your technology represents a new era in compassionate innovation. Please confirm Monday's demonstration time. Warm regards, Ellen Park, Director of Innovation Partnerships, Golden Care Health Systems. I reread it 3 times, feeling the rush of adrenaline and disbelief collide. Compassionate innovation. The phrase glowed in my mind. That was all I'd ever wanted to prove, that empathy could have market value. I leaned back, exhaling. For a moment, everything felt possible. Then my phone buzzed again, a message from Jason. Mom said you left last night. Didn't mean to hit a nerve. You know I just want what's best for you. I stared at the text, jaw tightening. I could almost hear his voice, smooth, rehearsed, dripping with condescension. My thumb hovered over the keyboard before I finally typed back, Thanks, Jason. Maybe this year I'll surprise you. I didn't hit send. Not yet. Instead, I opened the window. The city hummed softly below, wrapped in snow and silence. Somewhere down there, people were celebrating, clinking glasses, trading stories about family and fortune. I stood at the window, holding Golden Light in my hand. Its glow reflected on the glass, painting a soft halo around my reflection. Useless, Jason had said. But I saw something else. I saw purpose. By midnight, I'd packed the device, my notes, and the contract drafts into a small leather case. Tomorrow would be the start of something new. The quiet before the storm. I switched off the lights and sat in the dark, letting the golden glow from the prototype fill the room one last time, before the world found out what I'd built. For the first time in months, I whispered the words I'd been too afraid to believe. It's going to work. And outside the city, answered back with the soft shimmer of snow golden under the streetlight. By Monday morning, the snow had turned slushy gray and heavy along the sidewalks. I left my apartment before dawn. Golden Light secured in its black case, my nerves buzzing like exposed wires. Boston was still asleep, coffee shops dark, the streets half empty, but inside me, everything was moving too fast. I replayed every calculation, every circuit diagram, every test run. I'd done this 100 times before, but never with $8.9 million on the line. The cab driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror as he turned down Atlantic Avenue. Big day. I smiled faintly. Something like that. Golden Care's headquarters stood like a glass cathedral overlooking the harbor, sleek, modern, unbending. Inside, everything smelled faintly of polished steel and ambition. The receptionist greeted me with the practiced warmth of someone used to billion-dollar deals. Ms. Reed. Welcome. The board is waiting for you in the Innovation Suite. Innovation Suite. The name alone felt surreal. As I followed her down the long hallway, my heels clicking softly against the floor, I thought of Jason sitting in some sterile office at his investment firm, scoffing at my little experiments. I wondered what he would say if he could see me now, if he knew I was walking into a room that could change my life. When I entered, Ellen Park, Golden Care's Director of Innovation, rose to greet me. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She extended a hand. Clara, we've been following your work for months. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. Thank you for having me, I said, shaking her hand. Behind her sat 2 other executives, both expressionless, both studying me like they were trying to decide if I was a visionary or a risk. Ellen gestured to the table. Let's get started. I set the case down carefully, releasing the latch with a quiet click. The prototype caught the morning light as I lifted it out, a smooth band of brushed gold with a faint pulsing glow. Ellen leaned forward, intrigued. Golden light, I said, taking a steady breath. A wearable device that detects early cognitive decline through neural micropatterns. It doesn't just record it, learns, adapts, and connects. One of the executives, a gray-haired man named Dr. Walters, raised an eyebrow. And what does it connect to exactly? Families, I replied. Doctors, caregivers. It creates a shared network of memory, not just data, but moments. It's more than health tech, it's emotional tech. That got their attention. Ellen gestured for me to continue. Show us what it does. I powered the device on. The room filled with a soft golden hue that seemed to breathe with its own rhythm. This color shift represents neural activity mapping, I explained. It monitors subtle changes in cognitive processing, predicting early decline years before standard tests can detect it. Here I tapped my laptop, displaying a graph. This spike represents the moment the subject hesitates while recalling a familiar task. It's small but consistent. The AI learns the baseline patterns and adjusts over time. Dr. Walters nodded slowly. Impressive. But is it reliable? 98% accuracy, I said, without hesitation. And improving. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the device. Then Ellen smiled. I think it's time to discuss integration. An hour later, I walked out of that glass tower with an agreement in hand, not final, but close. They wanted one last week of internal review, but Ellen's handshake had been firm. Congratulations, Clara, she said before I left. You're about to change the world. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside, and I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I wandered into a nearby cafe, the kind with chipped mugs and Christmas lights still hanging from the windows. As I stirred my coffee, my phone buzzed. Jason, again. Jason, heard you were meeting some company in the city. Golden something Dad said you're chasing another pipe dream. I exhaled slowly, staring at the message. My father must have told him I'd mentioned Golden Care vaguely at Thanksgiving before things had gone sour. I typed back Clara. It's not a dream, it's real. You'll see soon. A few minutes passed before his reply came. Jason, just don't get your hopes up. I've seen too many people crash chasing big ideas. Stick to something safe for once. Safe. The word made my chest tighten. Safe was Jason's world: spreadsheets, margins, boardrooms, full of hollow smiles. Safe had never saved anyone's memories. When I got back home, I placed the prototype on the table and watched the light pulse softly in the dimness. Golden. Alive. Real. I thought about my grandmother again, her voice the way she used to tell stories about her childhood, about losing everything in the fire when she was young. You can lose everything, she used to say, but if you remember who you are, you're never really gone. That's what this was. That's what Jason could never understand. The next morning, Golden Care sent an email confirming the closing date. Friday. By then, the deal would be official. Golden Light would be part of something bigger, something global. I closed my laptop, heart racing. It was happening, but before I could even celebrate, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't Jason. Ms. Reed, the voice said. This is Linda from the Boston Globe. We heard about your pending acquisition with Golden Care. Would you like to comment on the story? My breath caught. The story? Yes, she said. It's going live tomorrow morning. I froze. The deal wasn't finalized yet. If the story leaked too soon, everything could fall apart. My NDA was airtight, but someone had talked. Who gave you that information? I asked sharply. I can't disclose that, she replied. But I can tell you the source mentioned by your brother. The air left my lungs. Jason. My grip tightened on the phone. You're making a mistake, I said, but the line was already dead. I turned toward the window. Outside, the golden light from the street lamps flickered against the snow. My reflection looked calm, but inside, everything was breaking. The storm was coming. By the time I woke up Tuesday morning, my phone was already vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. Dozens of notifications blinked across the screen, emails, calls, texts. The top headline on the Boston Globe froze my blood. Local inventors, $8.9 million deal. With Golden Care leaked, family source confirms pending sale. The words, family source, hit harder than anything else. There was only one person who fit that description. Jason. I sat up, heart pounding, scrolling through the article. My name was everywhere. Clara Reed, independent inventor, cognitive tech developer, founder of Golden Light. They'd quoted details only a handful of people knew. A close relative had apparently provided context about my financial instability and past failures. The piece painted me as a naive dreamer who'd stumbled into a lucky break. By the time I reached the end, I was shaking. The phone rang again. Ellen Park. I answered on the first ring. Ellen. I didn't leak this, I know, she said quickly. Her tone clipped, but calm. Our PR team's already handling damage control. But Golden Care's legal department is concerned. They're suspending the signing until we verify that confidentiality hasn't been breached on your end. But I didn't say anything, I swear. I believe you, Clara. But we need to follow protocol. The call ended before I could respond. I sat there staring at the dark screen, the silence deafening. The hum of the heater filled the room, steady and indifferent. Then another call came, my mother. Clara. What on earth is going on? Jason just called me, says you're in trouble with some big company. I clenched my jaw. Mom, please, not now. Don't talk to me that way. He was just trying to help. He said they might back out because of the leak. He caused the leak, I shouted before I could stop myself. He gave them the story. The line went quiet for a moment. Then softly, he said he only mentioned it to a friend. He didn't think it would become a headline. I felt my stomach twist. That was Jason, reckless, self-serving, always just not thinking. I hung up before she could say anything else. Outside, the city was gray again. The snow had melted into dirty puddles, the kind that reflected your face back at you, distorted and dull. I walked to the window, watching the street below. A delivery truck passed by its back door, painted with an ad, Golden Care, a brighter future for every memory. The irony stung. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Jason. Jason, you're welcome for the publicity. Maybe now someone will take your golden idea seriously. I nearly dropped the phone. My pulse spiked, my vision blurred. Clara, you leaked confidential info. You could have ruined everything. He responded almost instantly. Jason, oh, come on, it's good press. Free marketing. You should thank me. I stared at the screen, feeling a strange calm settle over me, the kind that comes right before something breaks. Clara, meet me at Dad's house tonight. We're going to talk. He didn't reply. That evening I drove to the old family home in Cambridge, the same one where every holiday ended in tension. The Christmas lights still hung around the porch, blinking weakly against the darkness. My father's truck was gone, but Jason's silver BMW gleamed in the driveway. He opened the door before I could knock. Wow, you made the front page, he said, with that same infuriating grin. Guess Christmas came early. I pushed past him into the living room. You had no right. He shut the door lazily. Relax, Clara. The article's flattering. You should read the comments. People think you're some kind of tech prodigy. Golden Care pulled back the deal, I snapped. Do you understand what that means? Years of work gone. Millions gone. He crossed his arms, unbothered. They'll come around. It's just PR noise. You don't get it. My voice trembled. You've always treated my work like a joke, but this wasn't just an idea. It was my life. You leaked information protected by contract. That's illegal. His smirk faltered for a second. I didn't leak details. I just mentioned your name to someone at the Globe. They asked about your company and I said you were doing something with Golden Care. That's public knowledge now. It wasn't public, I shouted. You destroyed my credibility. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. Look, I thought you'd thank me. The story made you look big, important. Important. I laughed bitterly. They called me unstable. They said I was lucky. They said I needed the money because I'm broke. His silence was answer enough. That's when I saw it, the flicker of guilt behind his eyes, quickly replaced by defensiveness. Maybe you should have told me, he said suddenly. Maybe I wouldn't have said anything if you trusted me instead of sneaking around like you're curing cancer. I stared at him, my voice dropping low. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd do something like this. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The clock ticked on the mantel, echoing through the room. Finally, I turned toward the door. You know what the best part is? I said, my voice steady again. When the deal goes through, and it will, your name won't even be a footnote. I walked out without looking back. That night, as I drove home through the cold drizzle, I couldn't shake the thought that Jason had done more than just talk. Someone had fed the Globe internal details about the valuation about Golden Care's timeline, things he couldn't have known, unless someone inside the company told him, or unless someone paid him. The thought froze in my mind like ice. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. When I got home, I opened my laptop. A new email waited in my inbox marked confidential. It was from Ellen Park. Clara, we need to talk first thing tomorrow morning. Something has come up. Ellen. I stared at the message for a long time. The storm had just begun. By the time I reached Golden Care the next morning, the city sky was the color of steel. The building looked colder than usual, the glass reflecting a gray so sharp it hurt my eyes. I clutched my case tight, though I already knew today wasn't going to be about celebration. It was going to be about survival. Ellen met me in the lobby, her expression tight-controlled. Clara, come with me, she said without her usual warmth. No handshake, no smile. That alone told me everything I didn't want to know. We took the elevator in silence, the soft hum of machinery filling the space between us. My heart beat so hard, I could feel it in my throat. On the 22nd floor, she led me into a conference room. Inside, two men were already waiting, both in dark suits, both unfamiliar. One was older, bald, and unreadable. The other looked younger, sharper, like he'd come straight from a courtroom. Ellen gestured for me to sit. Clara, this is Mr. Fenton from Legal and Mr. Meyer from our Corporate Communications Department. I nodded, sitting slowly. What's going on? Mr. Fenton opened a folder, adjusting his glasses. Ms. Reed, as you're aware, the recent media coverage surrounding your invention has raised certain compliance issues for Golden Care, specifically the breach of confidentiality prior to contract execution. My pulse quickened. You think I leaked that story? He didn't look up. Whether intentional or not, the information originated from your personal circle. Our agreement requires all parties to maintain discretion until after signing. As of this morning, the board has voted to delay the acquisition indefinitely. Indefinitely. The words sliced clean through me. Ellen finally spoke, her tone softer now. Clara, I fought for this. I told them you had nothing to do with the leak. But they're nervous. This was supposed to be a quiet acquisition. The press turned it into a spectacle. I felt my throat close. Ellen, this is my life's work. You know how much this matters. I do, she said gently. But this is how corporate deals work. Once public perception shifts, the board protects the brand. I wanted to scream, but all I could manage was a whisper. Jason did this. Mr. Meyer tilted his head. Jason, your brother? He's the source. I exhaled, shaking my head. He talked to a reporter. I didn't know until it was too late. Ellen folded her hands. Even if that's true, it's still a liability. So that's it, I said, my voice trembling. Years of research, prototypes, testing, and it's just over because my brother ran his mouth. Not over, Ellen said quickly. Just paused. If the story dies down and we can rebuild confidence, there's a chance the board will revisit. A chance. A sliver. But it felt like a coffin nail dressed as hope. After the meeting, I stood in the lobby staring out at the harbor. The water was dark, restless, like the world itself was mirroring my fury. The same company that had called me the future of compassionate technology yesterday was now treating me like a liability. I walked outside into the cold, my breath fogging the air. The snow from last week had melted, leaving behind icy puddles that reflected the city lights like shattered glass. I pulled out my phone and called Jason. He answered on the second ring, cheerful. Clara, hey, saw the article. Pretty big deal, huh? Big deal, I hissed. You destroyed my deal. There was a pause. What are you talking about? Golden Care pulled out. They think I leaked the story. You gave them my name. He sighed dramatically. Okay, slow down. I might have mentioned it to a client over dinner, just casual conversation. How was I supposed to know it'd make the papers? Because you've lived in the world for 35 years, Jason, I shouted. You knew exactly what would happen. He chuckled, and that sound, the smug, careless laugh, was gasoline on a fire. Look, maybe this is a good thing. All publicity is good publicity. People are talking about you now. Talking about me like I'm a fraud, I snapped. I could lose everything. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, with a hint of disdain, maybe you should have taken my advice last Christmas. Sold the idea before it became a liability. I hung up before he could finish. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking. Not from cold, from rage. I slammed the steering wheel and screamed into the empty air until my throat hurt. Hours later, back at my apartment, I sat at my desk staring at the golden light prototype. Its faint glow pulsed steadily, unbothered by the chaos outside. I thought of my grandmother again, of the promise I'd made to her picture when I first began. I'll build something that remembers for those who can't. Fine, I thought. If Golden Care wanted to play corporate politics, I'd build something bigger. I'd take this device directly to the people who needed it, the caregivers, the families, the hospitals. I didn't need their approval. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, a courier stood there holding a white envelope. Delivery for Ms. Reed, he said, handing it over before disappearing into the night. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper from the Boston Globe's business desk. Hi, Clara. We'll be publishing a follow-up story tomorrow. Golden Care backs out of deal following internal leak. Would you like to comment? At the bottom was a note written in pen. Your brother said he regrets nothing. I stood frozen in this doorway, snowflakes landing silently on my hair. Jason hadn't just ruined my deal. He was turning my downfall into his entertainment. And in that moment, I decided something I'd never thought I was capable of, something cold, deliberate, final. If Jason wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. The golden light wasn't gone. It just needed to shine somewhere he couldn't reach. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines about my failure. Golden Care halts, 8.9 million deal after leak questions rise about inventor's credibility. Every word felt like a blade. The article featured a grainy photo of me from last year's tech conference, half-smile, tired eyes, under the headline that made me sound like a fraud. Beneath it, a quote from Jason. I love my sister, but she's always been idealistic. Sometimes you have to know when to stop dreaming and face reality. I didn't even realize my coffee had gone cold until the cup slipped from my hand and shattered across the counter. The sound jolted me back into the present. I grabbed my phone and dialed Maya. Don't read the news, she said immediately when she picked up. We're fixing it. It's everywhere, I said, pacing across the kitchen. CNN Tech, Bloomberg, even Reddit threads. How did he even get those quotes printed? Maya's tone hardened. Because your brother has friends in finance and a massive ego. But listen to me. This doesn't have to end the deal. If we move fast, we can salvage it. We just need proof that the leak didn't come from you. Proof, I laughed bitterly. You want me to prove my brother's betrayal? No, she said. I want you to prove your integrity. There's a difference. That stopped me cold. Integrity. The one thing Jason couldn't buy or fake. Golden Care's board meets again Friday, Maya continued. You've got 72 hours to convince them you're still worth the investment. We'll rebuild your credibility and maybe, just maybe, get them back on track. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. All right, let's do it. By noon, my apartment had turned into a war room. Maya brought coffee and her laptop, setting up across from me as we went through every document, timestamp, and message we could find. We built a digital trail showing that my communications had been secure, every file encrypted, every NDA intact. This is good, Maya said, scanning the timeline. We'll hand this to Golden Care's compliance team first thing tomorrow. But I wasn't done. I wanted Jason's fingerprints on the crime. I logged into the family cloud account, one I hadn't touched in years. My parents still used it for photos, recipes, tax files. Jason, ever careless, had synced his devices years ago. It took less than 5 minutes to find what I was looking for. Under a folder labeled finance stuff, there it was, an email chain between Jason and a Globe journalist. The timestamp matched 2 days before the leak. His message read, "Off record, my sister's company's being bought for 8.9 mil by Golden Care." You didn't hear it from me. My hands trembled as I stared at the words. He'd signed it with his work signature. I turned the screen toward Maya. "Here's our proof." Her eyes widened. "Clara, this is gold." "No," I said quietly, staring at the screen. "This is revenge. We printed everything, emails, attachments, and metadata. I packaged them neatly in a folder labeled Integrity File. That night I barely slept. I kept imagining Jason reading his own words on the front page of the same newspaper he'd used to humiliate me. But when the sun rose, my anger cooled into something sharper. It wasn't about destroying him. It was about reclaiming my name. By the time I reached Golden Care the next morning, I was calm. The receptionist looked nervous, like she'd seen my face in the news. Ellen was waiting upstairs, her eyes cautious but not unkind. "Clara," she said, standing as I entered. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I don't walk away from something I built," I replied, setting the folder on the table. "This is everything you need to clear my name." Ellen flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing as she read the email chain. By the time she finished, she looked up at me with something like admiration. "This is thorough. If this is real, we can bring it to the board." "It's real," I said simply. "You can verify the metadata." Ellen nodded, closing the folder. "Then we'll do that." "Clara, you just gave me what I need to reopen the deal." For the first time in days, my shoulders loosened. "Thank you." As I turned to leave, Ellen stopped me. "Clara," she said quietly, "whatever happens next, don't lose what makes you different. Companies can't manufacture integrity, but you have it." Her words followed me out into the cold air. For the first time in weeks, the sky didn't look gray, it looked golden, the faint sunlight breaking through the clouds. I stopped by a park on the way home, the one my grandmother used to take me to when I was a kid. The pond was frozen, and children were skating across it, their laughter carrying through the wind. I sat on a bench holding the Golden Light prototype in my hands. It pulsed, once bright, steady, alive. "You were right, Grandma," I whispered. "The light doesn't die just because someone tries to cover it." As I slipped the device back into my bag, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. From Ellen Park Subject Board Meeting, confirmed Friday 9. Body. Bring your prototype. And your story. They need to hear both. I smiled, a quiet determination settling over me. Jason had tried to bury me with lies. But by Friday, the truth would shine brighter than ever. The Golden Light wasn't finished. Neither was I. The elevator ride to the 22nd floor felt endless. The air was cool and sterile, the kind that made you straighten your back and hide your nerves behind a calm mask. I clutched the case containing the Golden Light prototype like it was armor. My palms were sweating despite the winter chill that still lingered outside. When the door slid open, I saw Ellen waiting near the glass-walled conference room. Her hair was perfectly pinned, her face unreadable, but when our eyes met, she gave the slightest nod. "You ready?" she asked quietly. I swallowed hard. I have to be. Inside the room was already filled. 10 board members, all in suits that probably cost more than my car, sat behind a polished mahogany table. The windows stretched across the entire wall, offering a sweeping view of Boston Harbor. But all I saw were their eyes fixed on me like I was both the problem and the proof. "Ms. Reed," said the chairman, a tall man with silver hair and a voice like gravel, "we appreciate your willingness to meet on such short notice. Given the recent complications, this discussion will determine whether Golden Care proceeds with or withdraws from the acquisition." I nodded, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "I understand." Ellen stood at my side, setting the folder labeled Integrity File on the table. Before we discuss the project, I believe it's important to clarify the matter of the leak, she began. Ms. Reed has provided substantial evidence identifying the source. The chairman's gaze shifted to me. Proceed. My hands were steady now. The information printed in the Boston Globe originated from my brother Jason Reed. He sent an email to the journalist 2 days before publication. I verified timestamps, metadata, and IP logs confirming his involvement. Ellen opened the folder and distributed copies to the board. The sound of shuffling paper filled the room. A woman with sharp features glanced up. "You're certain your brother acted alone?" I said. "He wasn't involved in my research or development. He had no authorization to speak on behalf of me or Golden Light." Another board member, a heavy-set man in a blue tie, cleared his throat. "Then why did he do it?" I met his gaze squarely. "Because he didn't believe in me. He wanted to prove that I couldn't succeed without his world, without money reputation control. He saw my work as a joke, and when he realized it wasn't, he decided to take the story from me." The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't pity I felt from them, it was respect. Ellen took over, then walking them through the digital proof, the chain of custody, the emails. When she finished, she placed her hands on the table. "This evidence clears Ms. Reed of any breach. I recommend we reinstate the acquisition talks effective immediately." The chairman leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Ms. Reed, your invention has been called revolutionary, but we've also heard concerns about scalability and long-term viability. Before we make a decision, I want to hear from you directly. Tell us why Golden Light matters." My heart steadied. This was the moment. I opened the case and lifted the prototype. Its surface shimmered faintly under the boardroom lights. "Golden Light isn't just technology," I said. "It's empathy made visible. It detects early cognitive decline, yes, but more importantly, it connects people. Families, caregivers. It bridges the gap between science and compassion. It helps people hold on to what makes them human." I placed the device on the table and tapped its center. A soft golden glow filled the room, warm and steady. "Every pulse you see represents neural patterns, moments of clarity, awareness, memory. This device learns the rhythms of its user's mind, catching the smallest shifts long before symptoms appear. It doesn't replace care, it restores it." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the light. I glanced around. Some of them leaned forward unconsciously, drawn to it like moths. "My grandmother inspired this," I continued softly. "She used to forget my name near the end. One day she held my hand and said, 'I don't remember who you are, but I know I love you.' That's what this is, for the space between forgetting and remembering. I wanted to make something that could protect that space." When I looked up, Ellen was smiling faintly. The chairman's expression had softened. "Ms. Reed," he said finally, "you speak with conviction. But business runs on results. What makes this worth $8.9 million? I didn't hesitate, because it's already saving lives. We've run 3 pilot programs, 2 in assisted living communities, and 1 in a veterans care center. Early detection rates increased by 38%. Families reported measurable improvement in quality of life, and hospitals reported a 20% reduction in emergency cognitive incidents. Golden Light isn't an idea, it's a reality." The woman with sharp features set down her pen. "You've done your homework." Ellen stepped forward. "If I may," she said, "Golden Care's analysts have verified these metrics. They align with our projections for integration into our existing health network. We're not just buying a device, we're buying a movement." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the chairman cleared his throat. "We'll deliberate privately," he said. "You'll be notified within 24 hours. As I packed up the prototype, he added, "Ms. Reed, regardless of the outcome, you've handled yourself admirably." Outside the boardroom, Ellen exhaled sharply, her shoulders relaxing for the first time all morning. That she said was extraordinary. I smiled weakly. "Do you think it's enough?" She paused. "I think it's more than enough. By the time I stepped out onto the street, the air felt lighter, the harbor glittering under the afternoon sun. I walked without direction, just letting the city hum around me. My phone buzzed once an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Clara Jason's voice said quietly, "We need to talk." I stopped walking. "You've done enough talking." "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't know it would go this far." I laughed bitterly. "You sold me out, Jason. To a newspaper. To the world." His voice cracked. "I lost my job. My firm said I breached confidentiality. Everything's falling apart." I closed my eyes, my breath fogging the air. "Then maybe it's time you learned what it feels like to lose something that mattered." He didn't answer. "Goodbye, Jason," I said softly and hung up. The city was glowing golden now, reflecting off the water. For the first time since the storm began, I felt something pure rise inside me, calm, steady, unbreakable. The light was coming back. When the sun rose the next morning, I didn't sleep. I hadn't even tried. I sat by my apartment window all night watching the city lights flicker out one by one, replaced by the pale glow of dawn. My phone sat on the counter silent, the weight of uncertainty pressing down like gravity. The board's decision was supposed to come today. At 7:14 a.m., the email arrived. Subject, Golden Care Board Decision. Confidential from Ellen Park. My hands trembled as I opened it. Clara. After an internal vote of 7-3, the board has chosen to proceed with the acquisition pending final legal review. Your integrity, documentation, and vision were key factors in this decision. Congratulations. Let's make this official. Ellen. For a second, the world tilted. My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with the kind of relief that feels like breaking through the surface after being underwater too long. I sank back into the chair, laughing quietly, my breath catching somewhere between disbelief and joy. Golden Care was back. I forwarded the email to Maya with a single line. We did it. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Maya didn't even say hello. You're trending, Clara. The leak story got retracted. The board's reinstatement leaked instead. And guess what? TechView just ran a headline calling you the golden mind behind the next wave of elder tech. Elder tech. I laughed. That's a terrible phrase. Maybe Maya said, but you're the face of it now, and investors are already calling. I stood up, stretching for the first time in hours, and looked at the prototype on the table. Its glow seemed softer today, warmer, like it knew we'd survived something. That afternoon, I met Ellen at Golden Care headquarters. The lobby was bustling, the kind of quiet energy that meant good news had traveled fast. She greeted me with an actual smile this time and handed me a cup of coffee. Official contracts will be ready by tomorrow, she said as we walked toward her office. But before that, the PR department wants to issue a joint statement, something clean and uplifting. No drama. No mention of the leak, I asked. She shook her head. No need to dig up the mud when you're standing in sunlight. I nodded slowly. Fair. We sat across from each other, the skyline glittering through the glass. You know, Ellen said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've seen hundreds of inventors, some brilliant, some delusional. But you built something that actually matters. Thank you, I said softly. It's not just about tech. It's about memory. Humanity. She smiled. That's why you'll go far here. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Don't let the success make you forget why you started. I nodded, but her words settled deep like a warning disguised as kindness. After our meeting, I drove straight to my grandmother's nursing home, the place where it had all begun. The corridors smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic, and the nurse at the front desk lit up when she saw me. Ms. Reed. We saw you on the news. That device, it's wonderful. Thank you, I said, smiling. I just wanted to drop off something. I walked down to my grandmother's old room. It was empty now, of course, but still felt full, like her laughter and humming still lingered in the corners. I set one of the golden light prototypes on the bedside table and turned it on. The golden pulse filled the room, steady and gentle. For you, I whispered. For everyone whoever forgot, and everyone who loved them anyway. A tear slid down before I even noticed. When I left the facility, my phone buzzed again. It was Jason. I hesitated before answering, but something in me, the part that still believed people could change, pressed accept. "Clara." He said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I saw the news. I figured you would. I'm sorry. Really." I didn't respond. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of city noise. He sighed. "I lost my firm position. They said I breached confidentiality. I don't blame them. I did this to myself. To you." Finally, I spoke. "You did. But I don't want revenge, Jason. I never did." "Then why didn't you expose me?" he asked quietly. "You could have ruined me completely." I looked out the car window at the city, at the golden sunlight reflecting off the snow-covered rooftops. "Because that's not who I am. I don't need to burn you to prove my light." For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then Jason whispered, "You've always been the better one." I smiled faintly. "No, Jason. I've just learned that winning means something different than you think." When I hung up, I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel pity. Just peace. Later that evening, I sat at my desk, the contract draft open on my laptop, my name in elegant black ink across the top. I traced it with my finger. Clara Reed, founder. Golden Light Technologies. It still didn't feel real. Outside my window, the city lights shimmered in gold. Not the garish gold of money or headlines, but the quiet gold of something earned. Something pure. As I closed the laptop, the prototype on my desk pulsed, once soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat reminding me, "Remember why you began." Tomorrow, I'd sign the deal that would change my life forever. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet glow of it all and let myself breathe. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I turned it slowly between my fingers, staring at the thick stack of papers in front of me, 30 pages that would change everything about my life, my company, and my future. Ellen sat across the table in Golden Care's sleek executive conference room, the morning sun cutting through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing everything in gold. It felt poetic somehow. "This is it," she said softly. "Once you sign, Golden Light Technologies becomes a wholly owned subsidiary of Golden Care with you as head of innovation. The payout will process within 48 hours. I nodded, still not reaching for the pen. The air smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. My reflection glimmered faintly on the glass table, tired eyes, calm expression. I had dreamed of this moment for years. Yet now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a transformation. Ellen watched me quietly. "You know, she said you don't have to decide today. The offer stands for a week." I smiled faintly. "No, I'm ready." I placed the tip of the pen against the paper, and for a second, I thought of everything that had brought me here. The laughter at Christmas dinner, Jason's mocking voice echoing across the table, the sting of humiliation when he told me to sell my useless idea. And then the glow of golden light in my hands, the pulse that reminded me I'd created something real, something that mattered. The first stroke of ink bled smoothly across the page. I signed once, twice, and finally Clara Reed. Ellen exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "Congratulations," she said. "It's official." She extended her hand. I shook it, feeling her grip firm and steady. "Welcome to Golden Care." When I stepped outside, the winter air hit my face, cold but clean. I looked up at the Boston skyline, glass towers catching the sunlight, each window flashing like tiny mirrors. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider looking up. I was part of the skyline now. My phone buzzed. It was Maya. "Did you sign it?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "It's done." I could almost hear her grin through the phone. "I hope you realize this means drinks are on you tonight. Only if you pick the place." We both laughed, and for the first time in months, the sound didn't feel forced. By noon, news of the acquisition had already spread. My inbox filled with interview requests, partnership offers, congratulations from people I hadn't spoken to in years. headlines started appearing: Golden Care acquires Golden Light for $8.9 million. Inventor Clara Reed leads new era in elder tech, from garage to global. How one woman's useless idea became a game changer. Every article used the same photo, me standing beside the prototype, its warm golden glow reflecting off my face. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same device that had once been called a waste of talent was now the reason everyone wanted a piece of my time. That afternoon, I stopped by a cafe near the harbor. The same one where I'd spent countless mornings sketching early designs, sipping cheap coffee, dreaming of someday being seen. The barista, an older man with kind eyes, recognized me immediately. "You're the Golden Light lady," he said, grinning. "Saw you on the news. Guess I'll have to charge you double for the fame tax." I laughed, handing him a 20. "Keep the change." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "My wife's in early-stage dementia," he said softly. "We signed her up for the trial you ran last year. Your device caught changes the doctors missed. She's still at home because of that thing. So, thank you." My throat tightened. "You don't owe me thanks," I said quietly. "You just reminded me why I made it." As I walked out, the sunlight spilled over the water, bright and endless. For a fleeting second, it looked like the entire harbor shimmered gold. That evening, I met Maya and Ellen for dinner at a quiet rooftop restaurant. The city glittered beneath us, and the air buzzed with quiet celebration. "To Golden Light," Maya said, raising her glass. "To resilience," Ellen added. I lifted mine last. "To the golden things, the ones we almost give up on before they shine." We clinked glasses and laughter filled the air. Halfway through dessert, my phone buzzed again. I checked the screen. Jason. For a moment I considered ignoring it, but something in me shifted. I answered. "Hey," I said. "Clara," his voice came through uncertain. "I saw the news. You signed?" "I did." A pause. "Congratulations. You earned it." There was sincerity in his tone, fragile but real. "Thanks," I said, letting the silence breathe. "I've been trying to figure things out," he continued. "I'm out of work now. Thinking maybe I should do something that actually helps people for once." I smiled softly. "That's a start. Do you think we could talk?" "Really talk," I hesitated, looking out at the city lights. "Not tonight," I said gently. "But maybe soon." When I hung up, Ellen gave me a curious look. "That your brother, yeah." She nodded knowingly. "People change when they see the light, or when they finally realize they were standing in the dark," I said. The night air was cold when we stepped outside, but it didn't bite anymore. The wind carried the scent of salt and snow, and as I looked out over the city, my city, I realized something. The golden glow wasn't coming from the skyline. It was coming from me. The cameras flashed before I even stepped onto the stage. The room was packed, reporters from every major outlet, flashing lights, microphones like a field of metallic flowers. The Golden Care logo glowed on the wall behind me next to the sleek emblem of my company, Golden Light Technologies. Beneath it, the tagline I'd written myself months ago now shimmered across the big screen, illuminating what memory forgets. Ellen stood beside me at the podium, calm and confident as always. She adjusted her blazer, leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "Remember, this is your story. Don't let anyone else tell you." I nodded, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The crowd quieted as she stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this historic day," she began. "Golden Care is proud to announce the full acquisition of Golden Light Technologies, a company redefining the future of elder health through innovation, empathy, and science. And now, I'd like to introduce the visionary behind it all, Ms. Clara Reed." Applause broke out. Cameras clicking like rain. I took a breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady, though my hands felt electric. A few years ago, Golden Light was just an idea scribbled on the back of a napkin, a dream to help families detect early signs of cognitive decline before it was too late. I never imagined that dream would bring us here. On the large display behind me, the demo video began playing. Golden Light prototypes blinked in slow, rhythmic patterns connected to real patients. A narrator described how the device monitored neural activity, detecting patterns invisible to the human eye, how early diagnosis saved lives, families, and memories. As the final frame froze, an elderly woman smiling with her granddaughter, the room erupted into applause again. When it quieted, a hand shot up from the front row. Ms. Reed, a reporter from the Boston Herald, asked, "You were once criticized for leaving your corporate job to pursue this invention. What would you say to those who doubted you?" I smiled faintly. I'd say sometimes the greatest ideas look useless until they change the world. And sometimes the loudest voices of doubt come from people who fear what you might become when you stop listening to them. Another hand rose. "And your brother," someone asked carefully. "Reports surfaced that he attempted to leak your work. Has that situation been resolved?" The question hung in the air like a blade. I could almost feel Ellen tense beside me. I met the reporter's eyes. "Yes," I said simply. "It's been resolved. I believe in accountability, but I also believe in forgiveness. People make mistakes. What matters is whether they learn from them." "Have you forgiven him?" I paused. The truth was complicated, but the answer was simple. "Yes," I said. Because carrying anger doesn't make the light shine brighter. It just makes the shadows deeper. The murmur that followed was soft, approving, curious, human. After the Q&A ended, Ellen and I stepped off the stage and into the green room. She handed me a bottle of water, smiling. "You handled that beautifully." I almost froze when they mentioned Jason, I admitted. "You didn't. You turned it into power." She paused. "Do you realize what you just did? You didn't just launch a product, you created a movement. Golden Light isn't just a device anymore. It's a story. People need stories." I thought about that as I looked down at my hands, steady now, warm from the adrenaline. I guess that's what this was always about. Not money, not approval, just being seen for what it truly is. Later that evening, the press coverage hit everywhere at once. Golden Light, the $8.9 million invention changing memory care. Clara Reed, from useless idea to national icon. A new era in compassionate tech begins. My phone buzzed nonstop congratulations from former colleagues, professors, strangers who'd seen the live stream. But one message stopped me cold. "Jason watched the conference. You were incredible. I'm proud of you." For a moment, I just stared at the text. It felt surreal, a sentence I'd waited my entire life to hear, and one I never thought I would. I typed back, "Thank you, Jason. I hope you're doing okay." After a few seconds, the bubbles appeared. "Trying to be. Maybe we could start over." I hesitated, then replied, "Maybe we already have." When I set the phone down, I looked out the window of my apartment. Boston's skyline glowed against the evening sky, the reflection of streetlights rippling on the Charles River like liquid gold. Golden Light. The name had come to me one night when I was half asleep thinking about how my grandmother used to say, "Even when the mind dims, love still shines somewhere." I didn't know then that it would become more than a brand. It would become a belief system, a way of living. The next morning, my inbox flooded with partnership offers. Hospitals, universities, even NASA had reached out for potential applications of my technology. Ellen forwarded them with a note, "You've opened a door no one knew existed." For the first time, I allowed myself to feel it fully pride. Not the loud kind that seeks applause, but the quiet, golden kind that fills your chest and makes you whisper to yourself, "I did it." And as I turned off my lamp that night, the prototype on my desk blinked softly in the dark, one last pulse before sleep. The same rhythm as a heartbeat. The same rhythm as hope. It was the day after Christmas when I saw him again. The city was still dusted with snow, the streets quiet, the sky a dull, forgiving gray. I had just finished a call with Ellen about the Golden Light expansion plan when I stepped out of the office, and there across the street, standing awkwardly beside a coffee cart, was Jason. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. His tailored coats and confidence were gone, replaced by something humbler. He caught my eye, hesitated, then crossed the street toward me. "Clara," he said, breath visible in the cold. "You look different. Success does that." I said evenly but not unkindly, "Coffee." He nodded and I ordered two, the familiar bitterness filling the air between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. "I guess you've heard about the firm." "Yeah," I said. "They filed for restructuring." "Restructuring," he repeated bitterly. "That's one way to say falling apart. Investors pulled out. My name's basically toxic in the finance world right now." He took a sip of coffee, wincing at its strength. "You know, it's funny. I used to laugh at you for chasing some dream I thought was beneath me. But here you are, the face of a multi-million-dollar deal, and I can't even get a call back." I looked at him. I really looked at him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by exhaustion, and for the first time, honesty. "I never wanted you to fail, Jason," I said softly. "I just wanted you to see that success isn't a limited resource. My light doesn't dim yours." He chuckled low and regretful. "You sound like Dad." That made me smile. Then maybe he was right about something after all. He stared into his coffee cup for a long time. "You were right," he said finally, "about everything. I used to think your invention was a fantasy. But when I saw the press conference, when I saw those families talking about how your device saved their parents," his voice caught, "I was ashamed. Because all I've ever built were deals that collapsed the second people stopped pretending to believe in them." The honesty in his tone struck something deep in me, a mix of old pain and unexpected grace. "You can start again," I said. "You're smart. Just build something real this time." He nodded slowly. "I don't know if I remember how." "Then start small. Do something that matters, even if nobody claps for it." He looked up at me then, and for the first time since that awful Christmas dinner, I saw my brother again, not the arrogant man who mocked me, but the boy who used to build things with me out of scrap metal in the garage, dreaming of how we'd change the world someday. "Do you ever think about Grandma?" he asked quietly. "All the time," I said. "She's the reason for everything." He smiled faintly. "She'd be proud of you." "She'd be proud of both of us," I said, surprising myself. We stood there for a long time in the cold, sipping our coffee. The silence no longer sharp, but comfortable, like old wool. When I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. It was Maya. "Guess who just called the office?" she said, her voice half gasp, half laugh. "CNN. They want to feature golden light in a segment on golden inventions changing the world." "Golden inventions," I repeated, amused. "Apparently it's a whole theme now. You're officially a trend, Clara." I laughed, shaking my head. "Well, I guess we'll shine while we can." That evening I went home and opened the prototype drawer, the one that still held the first clumsy version of golden light wires twisted and casing cracked. I ran my fingers over it gently. It wasn't just metal and code. It was memory made visible. I thought about Jason's face earlier, the regret, the humility, and realized something profound. His downfall wasn't karma. It was an awakening. Sometimes when the tables turn, it's not punishment. It's perspective. The next morning, Jason texted me. "You were right. I'm applying for a role at a nonprofit that helps seniors with digital access. It's small, but it feels right. Thought you should know." I smiled as I typed back, "That's the best idea you've ever had. Proud of you." "Merry late Christmas," he replied. I looked at the glowing words on my screen, then at the small golden prototype on my desk. "Merry Christmas, brother," I whispered. Later that night, I drove to my grandmother's old house, now renovated into a memory care clinic, one of Golden Light's first partner locations. The halls glowed softly with the gentle pulse of gold from each patient's device, creating a rhythm that felt almost alive. As I stood in the doorway, Ellen joined me holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "I saw the CNN piece," she said. "You looked radiant." I smiled. "It's not me. It's them, every person whose story this tech carries." She nodded, watching the golden lights flicker and sink, like tiny beacons of hope. "You know," she said, "sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right so completely they have no choice but to see you." I looked at the glowing hall one last time, warmth spreading through me. "Exactly," I said. "And sometimes when they finally do, that's when healing begins." Outside snow began to fall again, catching the light in the air, not harsh but golden like forgiveness made visible. The morning of the award ceremony felt unreal. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the golden pin on my blazer, the one engraved with the small spiral design of the Golden Light logo. I had received countless messages that week, invitations to speak at universities, podcasts, and conferences, but none of it felt as meaningful as what was about to happen today. Ellen had called earlier, her tone half amusement, half pride. The city's mayor himself will be there, Clara. You're officially the woman who turned empathy into technology. Don't be late, they're calling it the golden era of health tech. Golden, I repeated with a small laugh. The word had followed me all year in articles and speeches in my company's name. But to me it wasn't just a color. It was a feeling. Warmth. Resilience. Light that didn't blind, it healed. As I stepped onto the stage that evening, flashbulbs filled the auditorium, their glow merging with the gold of the chandeliers. I looked out at the crowd, hundreds of faces, some familiar, some not all, waiting for me to speak. Jason sat near the front next to my mother. For the first time in years, they looked peaceful. Ellen handed me the glass trophy, its base engraved Clara Reed, Innovator of the Year, for changing how we remember. The applause roared, and I smiled, blinking back tears. When it quieted, I leaned toward the microphone. I used to think success meant being seen. I began. But I've learned that real success is when what you create helps others see themselves, their loved ones, and their own worth. The audience listened still and intent. Golden Light was born out of loss, I continued. My grandmother began forgetting things, small things at first, then faces, then names. I wanted to find a way to help people like her hold on to what time tries to take. But what I didn't realize was that in trying to preserve her memories, I found my own purpose. There was a quiet hum in the crowd, that rare moment when people weren't just hearing but feeling. Many of you know the story, I said, smiling faintly. A few years ago, someone told me to sell my useless idea and pay off my debts. He said it at Christmas dinner, actually, right before dessert. The audience laughed softly. What he didn't know was that the useless idea would one day save lives, reconnect families, and yes, end up being worth $8.9 million. But money isn't the point. The point is sometimes the world won't see your value until you show them, until you light it up yourself. I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. And when you do, I added, my voice soft but certain. Forgive those who didn't see it sooner. They were never meant to define your worth. The applause rose again, long, warm, and full of something that felt like closure. After the ceremony, people gathered around offering congratulations and business cards. But I slipped away to the balcony, craving a breath of quiet. The city stretched before me, rooftops glowing under the winter moon. A gentle snow began to fall, turning everything below into a canvas of silver and gold. Jason joined me a few minutes later. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, watching the snow. "Mom's proud," he said finally. "She keeps telling everyone that her daughter built something truly golden." I smiled. "She's earned the right to brag." He turned toward me, his expression soft. "You were right, Clara. About everything. I used to think control was strength, that success was measured by who was watching. But now, I think strength is letting go and success is knowing what really matters." I met his eyes. "I'm glad you learned that." He nodded, looking out at the snow again. "I've been volunteering at the memory care clinic, the one you helped build. The residents love the device. One of them told me she remembers her wedding song again. She danced. That image, fragile human golden, filled me with warmth. That's why I made it," I whispered. Jason smiled. "You didn't just build a company. You built a bridge between who we were and who we can still be." For the first time, his words didn't carry envy or apology, only respect. I looked down at the glowing skyline, each light flickering like a heartbeat. "You know," I said quietly, "I used to think revenge was about proving someone wrong. But now I think the sweetest revenge is proving yourself right so beautifully that everyone wants to join you." He chuckled. You always did have the last word, only when it matters." As we stood there in silence, snowflakes drifted through the air, catching the light from the city below. The world felt still calm and complete. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I drove back to the clinic one last time. Inside the hallway glowed softly from dozens of golden light devices, each one beating in its gentle rhythm. I placed my award on the shelf next to the first prototype, crooked and imperfect but still shining. I whispered, "We did it, Grandma." The hum of the devices echoed softly, almost like a reply. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The light I created wasn't just for memory. It was for resilience, forgiveness, and the quiet certainty that even in the darkest seasons, something golden always remains. If this story inspired you, leave a comment. Your words might be the light someone else needs.